All right. I guess we skipped the intro for today then. We are live.
Greetings.
Greetings, everybody. Yeah, you had some having some technical issues here, but that's okay. Welcome to the South Star Classroom. We are today on, what are we on? Episode, my goodness,
225.
225. Yeah, that's crazy. Um, Good to be here today. We got an interesting topic, and Dr. Charles Cole is away on business, and hopefully we will be seeing Mr. Yanar soon. But if not, we can hold this thing down. We got this. No worries. All right. Well, let's go ahead and start with some check-ins. Jubilee, would you like to? How are things going in your world?
You know, it's a lot going on, but I'm standing in gratitude as I watch Meadow do all the things she wasn't doing when it was quiet. Uh,
There you go.
Finding her toys and things. But no, all is well. This is like busy time of the school year as things start ramping up before we take the
Yep.
descent towards the end of the school year. And I am counting down. Today is it March 2nd or March 3rd? Ugh,
Third.
3rd. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And so we have 5 days until daylight savings where we get to spring forward. And so I'm all good to go. How are you?
I am good. Yeah, it does feel like things are a little well, they don't feel like things are unsettled with this war that we have going on right now, which is kind of crazy. So it seems like the last time we talked here on the show, all hell has broken loose. I was thinking about doing a show today about less about the war. I was thinking maybe we should do the War Powers Act, or maybe just you know, getting advice from you all and our listeners around how to like talk to your kids about war. But then I figured, you know what, we need a break. Let's just stick with what we do best, and hopefully that's what we do today. But yeah, it's an interesting time with a lot of the if you work in schools,
Yep.
most of my work is in schools. I just got a new client, which is a non-school based client, but schools operate on this. They don't operate on the calendar year; they operate on the school year. And so right now we're like kind of the last couple of months of the year, but also going into planning mode for next school year. So, and people are tired, but you have to like pivot them and be like, okay, it's time to start planning for next year. And they're just like, really? Yeah, we do.
Yeah, very much so. I
Yeah.
was saying that in January. Like, what? We just got here. Oh, listen, because that lie that we're gonna get it all figured out in the summer. It's like no, nobody has
Hmm.
energy in the summer to really think about these things. So
Yeah.
yeah,
All right. Well, thanks for everybody who's showing up. We got people rolling into
greetings,
the
greetings.
chat here. We are going to dive into the topic for today. So let's see. All right. Title of today's show is um,
You know,
let's see. Title of today's show is Screens or Support. Who pays the price for ed tech bans? And let me get the banner up here so people know what we're doing. Let's see. And while I'm doing that, I will read a little bit here about the topic. Let me get this banner up here real quick. Can do two things at once. Save, and there we go. Okay. All right. So a couple of things have happened. The American Academy of Pediatrics put out a recent report, and so I want to talk about that for just a second here. And then a couple of states have made some pretty significant shifts to remove technology from schools. So I want to talk about that too. Let's go. All right. So the American Academy of Pediatrics has shifted its 2026 guidance on screen time. Okay. They put out an annual report on the latest research in screen time, away from strict hour limits towards considering quality, the context, family connection, in digital use. So they used to kind of honor this 2 hours per day of screen time. They've kind of thrown that out of the window, acknowledging that young people use screens for school, communicating with friends, learning, and social connection, not just entertainment. The American Academy of Pediatrics, and this is good because both you and I are parents and we have kids that are, end users of this stuff. The AAP urges families and caregivers to focus on balanced digital ecosystems, okay? Replacing screen use with activities like sports and play, creating family media plans rather than punitive caps. Experts acknowledge that not all families have equal access to safe, low screen alternatives like parks, safe neighborhoods, after school programs, meaning equity and community resources are crucial to make up these gaps. And then let me move to the next one here. I think you're frozen. That's okay. We can keep going.
Am I frozen?
You were for a second. Okay. You're good. All right. Number 2. So that's the first piece on the AAP kind of pulling back on their 2-hour rule per day, saying it's bigger than that. It requires like family engagement, after school programs, all this and that. Number 2, the second piece that we're going to be talking about today is 2 different states have weighed in on limits and bans on EdTech in schools. Okay. A wave of state legislation is proposing limits or even outright bans on educational technology in schools, especially for younger grades. We're talking kindergarten or TK through 5. Just outright like banning them, and then also putting caps on usage in middle and high schools. Okay. Advocates of the restrictions argue that widespread EdTech usage harms attention, mental health, and that student data collection by tech companies is unsafe or inappropriate. The opponents of the state, including education leaders and teachers unions, contend that technology, when intentionally integrated, supports learning and future workforce readiness. They call for investment in teacher training and safeguards, right? Not bans. I think the 2 states were it was like Kentucky and another state, I think. And this is like ed technology. There's a whole other like show that we could do, which I'm also seeing come up now on AI and like chatbots and those things collecting individual student data based on what our kids are like typing into the chatbots, it's kind of scary. Yeah. So I wanted to pause there, just kind of get your general take on, because one of these pieces is like, what's the guidance with screen time usage outside of school, and then the other one is, obviously advocating for less screen time within schools. What's your quick take on those?
I mean, quick take is let's shift from banning. Let's give it up with the banning. And let's shift and discuss how to safely integrate. Let's move from banning to integration. It's here. When a baby is born, there's no way you're not going to get that baby back in the mother's womb. It's out. The baby's out. You have to figure out how to support the baby after the baby is born and out. And I think there is some reconciliation needed with that thought that like it's here. The technology is here. It's growing rapidly, and the bans are not going to work, right? And so if you really want to have effective conversation, let's start by talking about integration and, monitoring and behaviors and, safety and security and all that kind of stuff, because banning it is not going to do anything. It's putting a Band-Aid on it, and it's not going to help. That's my initial take.
The 2 states are with proposals, right, to prohibit EdTech use in K-5 are Tennessee and Kansas. So interesting. I think both red states probably, something, I'm not sure if there's a connection there, but we'll see where that goes. But those are not yet passed, but it looks like they are being proposed. Let's see. Oh, and also in this year, about 35 states plus Washington D.C. Have initiated laws or policies that limit student phone use in schools. So that's just like the phone piece, right? Maybe that's the first wave in schools is like phones, and then we can talk about the other tech use. But I agree. I think integration is the way to go. The second, but I do think there need to be limits. There's a whole body of research. I don't know if you've seen any of this that is saying that we know, like, if you actually read something in a book and then you are asked questions and you actually have to like write out your questions with a pencil and a paper, that it's a very different process than reading it on a screen and answering it on a Chromebook. Like, your brain goes through a totally different process when you have to, like, when you're reading it on paper, and then more importantly, when you're actually like handwriting the words to the response. It exercises a different part of your brain.
Yep, I believe it.
Which makes sense. Let's talk for a second about this. So the second piece calls for, or the AAP is calling for kind of a more a loosening of restrictions or guidance for parents at home, to say, maybe it's not as simple as like 2 hours a day, but you should also be thinking about after school, like family activities, after school sports, after school playtime, things like that. What are your initial thoughts on that proposal, and what are some potential issues with that?
I don't know. I think it's a potential overreach. Like, and I know it's just suggestions, but I do think that in order for us to improve this, we have to do it as a village. So I do agree with that. And again, I still go back to my word, integration. I think it's deeply a part of lives. Like, whether it's the cell phone or just digital devices, like if we broaden the term, we're using that stuff all day long, right? Between cell phones, TVs, Alexas, iPad. I mean, it's everywhere, right? So I think guidance for families, I think, should be maybe more so around core values, and then that makes me think it's a bit of an overreach, because who's like the American Association of Pediatrics is going to be like, make sure to stay true to your core values as a family. I mean, we can, share our own practices and what we do with our families and our kids by way of community. But I don't see that kind of, language or encouragement or suggestion coming from the AAP, so.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it's very complicated, because they're attempting to put out guidelines, national guidelines, and every community in this country is different, right? We have different cultural values. We have different, live in different economic systems, live in different, community contexts across the board. So I think when they're part of what they're recommending here, they're assuming that, screen time and also, family time, and also, sports, athletics. What else are they recommending? Supervised enrichment programs. There's assumptions to all of this stuff. That number one, do all school districts offer free access to high quality after school programs, right? That's kind of, we're not really sure. Even the idea of kids should be out playing, after school, right? Not all of our neighborhoods, not even saying that they're unsafe in terms of crime, but just the way that our cities are designed. Some cities, just by the way that they're designed with traffic and cars, they're just not even pedestrian friendly, right? And so for kids to be getting from point A to point B on foot or on a bike, is it looks different in different areas. And then even like things like athletics, you have maybe some schools offer sport programs. You tend to see less of it the younger kids get.
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about like organized sports. I'm just talking about like, after school, like, non-competitive kind of sports, where we know a lot of kids get that outside of school via like club activities, but that stuff is very expensive. It costs like hundreds of dollars a month, So I definitely think there are some blind spots here in this, but let's go back to talking about technology use in schools, because I know you spent a lot of time in schools. I spent a lot of time in schools. At one point, I was definitely a very big advocate for technology, not like in an end, but mainly for two things. For assessment, not like big assessments, but like micro assessments, like very quick assessments that teachers can give that they don't have to like physically grade by hand. That was one. And then number two, for like any kind of like specialized reading or math or any of the subjects, depending on the grade. Like if you took an assessment, a test, and we knew that you struggled with, division or fractions or percents, whatever it was, your teacher could go and assign you some kind of module on some kind of platform where you could just get independent practice, right? It was adaptive to your needs.
Absolutely.
Doesn't replace a teacher, but it gives you an opportunity to like practice. I thought those are like appropriate uses of technology.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think now, it's like kids are like sitting at tables together doing, group work, but they're essentially just on Chromebooks, right? So they're not really engaging with one another.
Yeah.
Like, what are you seeing?
So, I've seen a couple of great technological uses where there's kind of a buildup and the technology is used more so for reporting or recording. To me, that's in a high level classroom, like where that teacher is adept, they're trained, they know what to do. They know how to help scholars make their thinking visible. They know how to lead academic discourse. And automatically, when you have a skilled teacher, technologically, the technology use of it is different in those kinds of classrooms, right? Versus a potentially more novice teacher. And I'm not saying that a novice teacher couldn't come in and know how to do it. I'm just saying that this is usually the trend, right? Where you have a novice teacher or a teacher who is, disconnected, apathetic, right? All the things. That technology in that kind of classroom is used for busy work. It's used as a behavioral management tool, right? So when I hear all the bans and don't use this and reduce this, I'm like, are we really dealing with the root of the issue? And I think the answer is no, because I have seen classrooms where students are engaged in conversation with the teacher and they're not paying the Chromebook no mind, because the conversation is so engaging. The task is, invigorating, right? It's challenging, it's rigorous. And so, but that is cultivated by the classroom teacher, right? Then there's, a classroom teacher who potentially is a strong teacher, right? But the technology allows the teacher to go into places that she or he does not have the bandwidth or capacity to go into, right? For example, to your point, if I got, right, and post-COVID, this was an issue. We know reading and math, all this stuff was an issue pre-COVID, but we know that COVID exacerbated what we're talking about here, right? In terms of the decline in our proficiency and all that. We know that's an issue. So now, post-COVID, you have a 7th grade class. You got 2 kids on grade level, 6 kids with IEPs, 7 multilingual learners, right? All those things. And yeah, you want to sit and plan, you want to differentiate and diversify everything to meet the needs of your learner, but you're one person. You don't have a push-in person, you don't have a support person, you're one person. So now technology provides that opportunity to meet the needs of those students, right, without needing 100% of your attention, right? And technology, at least what I have seen, at least it comes in and it's adaptive to your point where it meets those kids' needs, right? So it is differentiated. So I say all that to say, I think it depends on the teacher in terms of its use. It depends
Yep.
on the bandwidth of the school, right? And we know a lot of our schools, a lot of our educators, they are stretched thin. And that's why I really am a proponent for the use of technology in classrooms with safe integration, right? And just really being thoughtful about how it's used and not using it for busy work or a behavioral management tool.
Are and I don't know the answer to this, and I don't want to assume you're probably closer to this in the work that you do. But what does like ed technology um, training look like in modern day teacher preparation programs?
Yeah, it's so funny. We had a PD not too long ago. This was for district level leaders, though, so
Huh?
I didn't take a little page out of the book, but it was quite invigorating because it really was about efficiency, and it was about being able to provide leaders with more tools, right, to help their day along, right, to create more efficiency, and
Yep.
to also um, help them to capture what's most important, right? So with in less time, right? So if you're spending time doing your observations, of course, that's a lot of writing, a lot of note taking, right? How can you use this AI to capture the literal notes? And so we had conversations about those kinds of things, which I think is also transferable to the classroom as well, because it's the same thing, right? So much to do and so little time, so many expectations and so little time. And so I think that's been the angle from the district that I'm with. How do we become more efficient? How do we capture what's most important? And we want to do that so we can spend the time on what matters most and not be
Yep.
bogged down in the administrivia, not be bogged down in the note taking, all the things that take us away from building capacity and making sure kids are getting high quality instruction.
Boom. I wrote, and this is so long ago. I'm looking for it now. And it's probably not anywhere on the internet anymore, but I'll find it. Um, but well, let me back up. It was around 2000 and let me just check some dates here. Maybe 2009, maybe
Yep.
2008. I forget exactly when it was, but or maybe 2009. I was observing a teacher. I was principal, and I was observing a ninth grade teacher. He was a very interesting guy. He'd retired from, he'd worked in the like investment world. He was like he came in from a big like a Charles Schwab kind of entity,
Mm.
and he's like, I want to like come and help kids. I'm like, sure you do. You really want to do this? And he's still working at the school. It's crazy. So this guy came in, gave him a shot to teach math, and he very smart man, knew math. But I remember sitting in his class one day, and this is a classroom of probably 25 kids, ninth graders. So they're coming in from like all kinds of different school settings in Oakland.
Yeah.
Most of them not like good places for kids to learn. And so the kids struggled. He had his curriculum. He's like, this is ninth grade curriculum. And it wasn't even, I think it was algebra. And they just weren't ready for it. And I remember I was like counting the time that he took during a lesson to respond to students' questions. And it was good that they were asking questions, but these kids were asking basic like arithmetic questions. They didn't understand the basic steps. And I'm like, and then I'm looking around at like 20% of the class that is not engaged because they understand this stuff, but he's helping these other students that need a much deeper level of support. And I'm
Yes.
like, I sat with him afterwards. I'm like, this is not humanly possible. You can't do this. I'm like you don't see it. And when you're the teacher, you're just like trying to help kids and you're
Yeah.
grinding through it. We've all been there, but I was able to help him see. I'm like, it's not sustainable for you. It's not sustainable for the kids that need your help because they're not getting it either. And it's not sustainable for the kids that are ready for Algebra 1, but they're not getting it also because you're having to do like remediation work.
Yep.
So
Yep.
we found, I've told the story before. We found the Khan Academy, and when we were like, even before the Khan Academy rolled out, and they were based out of Silicon Valley. We were one of their like year 0 pilot programs.
Nice.
We worked with
Great
their
resource.
developers on the interface.
Yeah.
Sal Khan came to the school. There's videos on YouTube about us, and then our math scores for 9th grade over 2 years shot up. From our 9th grade algebra scores went from like the lowest percentile in the state to the top 10.
I just love
regardless of demographic. So we were like this little charter school in East Oakland, serving high needs, 99% free reduced lunch kids, to performing like top tier across the state of California compared to all other kids, right? So I was like, well, that's how it's done. You can use the technology to personalize the education, but you still need a teacher at the center of it. And to manage the data and to understand the data and to make sure kids are getting what they need, and to make sure that they're doing it. So, it actually, it works. And, kids can, some kids don't like it. I think most do, because, it can be embarrassing to be in a 9th grade class and ask your teacher, about you don't understand how to multiply integers, right?
Yeah, for
Getting
sure.
very technical, but that's how kids end up not asking questions, and
Absolutely.
they end up not getting what they need. And so we're definitely early adopters. Also, another interesting story was we knew. So I was teaching. Before I became principal, I was teaching when MySpace was going out and Facebook was coming in. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we adopted, or I adopted for my classes, all of my classes. I'm like, we're going to use this platform called Edmodo. Do you remember Edmodo?
I do.
So we set up Edmodo in all my classes because I knew that our kids were going to be, so we used it as a way to communicate, assignments and, this and that. They could message me, I could message them. And more importantly, I use it as a tool to monitor their usage and the way that they communicated with one another on the platform, to build up some digital literacy, what does it look like to be respectful online, right?
Come on.
And so, that wasn't technically part of the grade for what I was doing, but I used it to give them feedback on let's pretend this is not your private Facebook or private MySpace. This is something public. People are going to see it. So how do you want to be perceived? What kind of language do you want to use? Right. That was in 2008, Jubilee.
Yes.
20 years ago.
Almost. Can you believe that? But yes, those are the types of conversations I think we should be having. You know what I mean? Instead of the banning language is so antiquated. It's what are we talking about? Right. Let's think about it. And not that I want to use war as an example, right? But what I do want to say is our military, our bioengineers, our scientists, our surgeons, right? And any other sector that you could think of, they're utilizing technology at high levels. And we're over here we're just going to ban that. We're just going to tell them can't use it in school. We're going to tell them put the cell phones down. It's there are countries that are light years ahead of us because they have figured out how to integrate, right? And how to ensure that there's our young people or their young people can use these tools with automaticity, right? And
Yep.
not treat it like it's an enemy. And that's what, like, in one of the schools in my portfolio, well, there's actually 6 of them, right? But it's a K-12 spectrum. So you get to see, what does it look like? What does their culminating work look
Yeah.
like when a
Yeah.
child comes in kindergarten and when they're almost out the door? These babies are making robots that will chase you down the hallway, like the robot in BJ's. They built it. They understand coding, they understand, and they built it. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I think that when we think of bans and let's lessen it, it's just too much time. It's because our scope is limited in what this means. Our children can be or have access to, what they can create, what they can build, if they understand how to use it safely, right, and in an innovative way. And that's why I get so bogged down by those conversations. I'm like, this is what we still talking about? How many schools built? What's your policy on cell phone bans? Do you have the pouches? Are you gonna do you make them put it in a locker? Do you confiscate? Yeah, we snatch them from every kid. If we see you with a hoodie, if we see you with a phone, we're snatching it. It's like, we still talking about that. And there is somebody out there that is building a new agricultural system to grow tomatoes on the 3rd floor with a robot.
Yeah.
Without gravity. And we're like, we're going to take your cell phones away. Don't bring them in a school. They impede the learning process. It's like,
yeah,
please.
I hear you. All right, let's go back to this AAP stuff, because now I want to like talk about and we're kind of off track here for the questions, and that's okay. But we're freestyling.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about like younger learners now.
Yeah.
Because there are a couple things that we know about technology, and let me go over a couple of these, and I want to get your take. So now I'm talking about like 5 to 10-year-old range, right?
Yep.
So that's like elementary school.
Yep.
What we know, some of the key concerns are the rapid fire nature of technology and screens and digital content impacts attention development, right?
Yes.
The more our young people are interacting with screens and technology, takes away from time to have language-rich interactions with adults.
Yep.
Right? Because I mean, it's not just about like the sound of a word or how it's spelled, but it's about the enunciation, the facial expressions, the back and forth, and the flow. You know, maybe you could argue AI is going to like do that better too, but I'm like, I don't know. You know, fine motor and sensory learning, we know that happens best through like physical activities, not on a touch screen, right?
Yep.
Also around literacy concerns, and I get it. You know, there's this whole new movement around what they call high dosage tutoring. I kind of have a problem with that terminology. I'm like, when I think of like dosing, I'm thinking about like something else. Yeah. or like high dosing, like some kid, some young person is like struggling to like, you know, some facet of literacy. And so instead you're just going to like just more.
Right.
That's challenging. Okay. So around literacy, some common issues. Our students are reading less from printed text, and we talked about that earlier. Difficulty with deeper reading and sustained attention, right? If you have a book, if you have a piece of paper, like you can't click on it. You kind of got to sit and like, you know, you can't fidget with it. You got to sit and like focus on it. And then again, the bigger issue is an increased. I'm actually making a play here for human being teachers the more we rely on educational apps, you know,
Yep.
um, the less we tend to rely on the power of direct instruction. I'm not talking about specialized, you know, differentiated learning. I'm talking about like direct instruction. So
Yeah.
I think there's a play here for direct instruction, which, you know, I mean, direct instruction 10 years ago was like, you can't say that, you know. It was like it
Right.
was
Part of it.
it was kind of like a four-letter word. So
Right.
so thinking about that, those things, and like younger people specifically, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on, like, you know, technology focused on the elementary grades?
Yeah, I think guard the babies, protect their environment at all costs. But this right here, I mean, I think raising kids, you need a village, period, right?
Hmm.
Especially in these formative years, because I think it's them learning how to learn. Not that you have to be taught how to learn, but I think that's where a lot of like habits are formed, good ones and bad ones, right?
Hmm.
So like if I reflect back to, classroom experience or, when I was, in school-based leadership, the students that came to school that hated picking up a book, that acted out every single time it was time to go sit at the carpet, right? Or when it was time for them to transition back to their seats for independent reading, independent work, they never picked up a book at home. They didn't read at home. They didn't do math at home. They didn't converse at home. So this environment that's asking you to do all of those things in a sitting, now it's overstimulated and it's highlighting the fact that I am not doing this well, right? Or I have a skill gap, right? Or a proficiency gap. So I think if we think about pouring concrete, that's how I think about the early years, right? Like you only get one time to do that.
Yeah.
And you can try to recoup it. Like I saw a dude on TikTok, he 35. He like, I'm teaching myself to read and I'm 35 and I read in the 5th grade level. I get it. It's just way harder, especially when you have to actually go out, work and sustain yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so I think about those formative years as like concrete being poured, and you want to get as much goodness in there before the concrete dries because it's harder to reverse. And so I think those years, yes, there's going to be some technological use, of course. My kids are watching Teletubbies, Dora the Explorer, all these different things. But of course, it was balanced by, or actually superseded by us going outside and going to the museums and going to science shows and all of those things, as many
Hmm.
things as possible. So I think it is important to really guard those early years, the formative years. And that is where I wouldn't say a ban, but I would say more rigidity. My words are
Yeah.
not coming out today. More
That's all right.
rigidity, more structure in the earlier years, so that it's not whatever they're learning and their ways of learning and they're thinking about thinking, all of that is not interrupted by the constant use of electronic devices.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I agree. I remember when so I worked in schools from TK to 12, and my time in the TK through 8th space was one where I came into a particular school that was a public Montessori school, and Montessori is all about their works, the physical materials, the prepared environment, and like technology is just not part of that. For parents that want Montessori, they want kids counting beads and like doing practical life and like playing with the number board and the literacy towers and all that stuff, which is all great. But I was like, let's try this thing. So we got these like mini iPads, and I think through a grant, and this is probably in 2015 maybe.
Mhm.
And let's get them set up for and I don't know why, but we decided to pilot them in like the primary classrooms, which are like TKK, so our youngest kids.
Mhm.
And we made it like a station, right? We had like the morning work The morning work period for those kids was like 2.5 hours long, and students
Mm,
could move around and choose to do um, the iPads for a limited time. But so you would get on an iPad, you would
yeah,
scroll, you would find your name. The kids could find their names, and then they could do like two or three different apps, and they were all essentially based around like early numeracy and math and counting.
yeah,
And the kids loved it. It's like they're on a thing, but they're also doing the physical work of like they're not yet using pencil and paper, but they're using a device, and then they're using the actual physical works in the primary classroom setting.
absolutely.
Um, and it also, like, I mean, not just for Montessori teachers, but for any teachers, um, as a principal, you don't get a lot of data back from your teachers. They're not like, maybe they're taking qualitative notes and observational notes, but
Yep.
the data also gave me important insights as an administrator. Especially if we had a young person who maybe they thought was on a track for like evaluation for an IEP. Well, let's look at what this data is saying from that we're getting from this app. And I
Yes.
got so much pushback from these parents. They thought I was like the devil, and it probably felt like that to them. But I can guarantee you, like when those kids went home after school, they were playing on iPads.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? You made
I'm
me
like,
think
come on.
too. They're fine. You're definitely not the devil for sure. And let's think about it. I don't know if there's evidence out there about this, but I don't know that there's a way for technology to address all learning styles, right? And all
Yeah,
modalities. So
for
it's
sure.
like when you're saying what you're saying about the early years and like not allowing them to do the whole iPads in school or whatever it was, right? I think that's great because you need to touch stuff. Like if you're, those counting cubes and the manipulatives and all that stuff that kids
Mhm.
do in math and that between K and 5 and sometimes even K and 6, that concrete,
Yeah,
right? So to make it, being able to connect the abstract to the concrete and make that make sense and then
exactly. Yeah.
walk it through and then make some kind of conjecture in math. Like I've seen the light bulb go off when kids are touching things, when they are manipulating things, and it's like, oh, this is one, and this is 10, right? And 10 of these tens make 100. Like it's literally like science, you know.
Yeah.
And if we look at scientists and researchers, they have things that they touch and manipulate, right? It's not all on a screen. So I think we do lose that if we say, well, that's easy. You could just go practice that on the screen. I think we end up, fostering a future deficit because they missed out on that chunk of math that helped them really build conceptual understanding of math, right? And we don't need another generation of rote memorization, So
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's focus here. So we're kind of going off track, but I think we're going in a good direction.
yeah,
Let's talk about ed tech usage for teachers, right? Planning, scheduling, assessment, um, you know, goal tracking, like any of that stuff. Because I mean, that was always where like my head was in two places with technology when I was in the classroom and when I was running a school. It's
yeah,
like, how can I, three things on the student end? It's two things. It's like, how can we use technology to provide better, like personalized instruction for kids that need it
yep,
beyond what a human teacher could do? That was one.
yep, yep,
Number two was how can we get better data around how the student is progressing? That's the other side of it. So internal.
yep,
And then on the teacher front, it was always like, even when I was a teacher, like how can I use technology to make my job, which before technology was incredibly like, paper, pencil. We all had the lesson plan books, way more efficient. So I could focus on like what really mattered, and I can use technology to make my planning more efficient. So
yeah,
I can just go in and like really work with young people.
yep,
Um, And I always did. I mean, I haven't been in the classroom in 20 years, but even 20 years ago when I was in a classroom, or over 20 years ago, I mean, at that time, I was like searching up any kind of tool to make my work more efficient, both on the organizational front, on the student assessment side. We piloted what eventually went on to become a program called, I don't even know if it's around anymore, but like Data Director.
Mm,
So it was like a summative, it could be a summative or a formative like assessment tool for all four core subjects in high school. So we had it for history, social science, uh, English, science, and math, right? We had a whole bank of like test questions that came with the platform that were crowdsourced, that we could create, that were tied to standards.
yep.
Teachers could go in on the fly, create an assessment, give the assessment to kids, take the results back then because they were on paper still, feed
Yep.
them into a scanner, and get
Yep.
results instantaneously,
Oh yeah.
right? It took some tech training, but it was there. Um, and then the technology advanced even more, where you could just have the students take the assessment directly into a platform and get instant feedback. And like if I'm a teacher and I don't have to I'm going to grade their writing and their long form, but I'm not going to sit there and grade their like multiple choice, right? And that could be done in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah.
So we used all that stuff, and then that was so I don't know what's going on in that space, but I know like every school is using like Google Classroom now, and every school system pretty much has like a grade book. But I'm not really seeing, at least based on my vantage point as a parent, teachers really leverage technology to make the work more efficient. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I see a mix. I think teachers are asked to do a lot, and a lot that
Hmm.
doesn't have to do with teaching, right? But it's a part of teaching, right? All that administrivia, like I mentioned earlier. Um, I really think every teacher should have an assistant, honestly, to take care of all that stuff, right? And when I ran my school, I had a co-teaching model, really expensive model, but also really effective, because really it's the weight of several people on one person in a classroom, right? So I think yes, we have some apps and platforms that are used for efficiency, which I think are great. And yes, the note taking, all the things that you mentioned, definitely helpful. I think what takes it to another level is when these platforms, apps, or what have you, take care of the things that get in the way of not just lesson planning for teachers, but lesson plan internalization, right? So it's like teachers actually have the time to focus on, read, study, right? Think through what they are teaching. What do they want students to know, understand, and be able to do by the end of the lesson, by the end of the week, by the end of the unit, right? They have time to look at that assessment and make sure that their unit plan is addressing those key elements and those mastery standards. And like, I think the golden ticket, from my perspective, for teachers would be that, right? Taking all that other stuff, technology takes all the stuff off my plate that steals my time from being able to keep the main thing,
Yep.
the main thing, which is ensuring that I have a rock solid lesson, that I'm providing high quality instruction every single time I step in front of kids. And of course, we know there's behavior and there's other stuff that we can't control. But imagine if we had collaborative planning time or teacher team meetings and all of that are solely dedicated to like, what are we teaching? Like, let's get this lesson really tight and solid, because we didn't have to grade the test by hand, right? Like make all the 5011 phone calls. We didn't have to, write things out, all of those things. So
Yep.
I, I honestly think if we could figure that out, we'd put our teachers in a better place, because I've not seen a lesson that is strong that a teacher hasn't really combed over and been intentional about what he or she is putting in front of students.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I think it was a couple of years ago. I went to visit uh, Unity High School in Oakland, where the principal even today is the um, same guy that I hired to teach when I was principal, and then he went on to become principal, and he's been there ever since. So Harvard guy, and I remember going back a couple of years ago, and like every time we go back, we like have these conversations, we reminisce. He's his name is Will Nee. He's like, you know, Castillo, I remember one time you gave me some advice, and I'll never forget it. And I was like, oh God, what's he going to tell me? He says he said that I told him that the best way to prevent classroom management issues is a well crafted and prepared lesson plan. So I was like, all right.
You ain't lie, that was good
I
advice.
mean,
It still stands true today. That's why I'm
exactly.
like, when the people
Yeah.
talk about technology and
Your
oh, it's
comments reminded me
because
of
of
that.
this, because of that. It's like, but did you plan? You walked in here, you had no plan, you have no behavioral management techniques, thoughts, you have no relationships with the kids.
Yeah.
What did you think was finna happen in this
What
class?
did you expect? A miracle?
What? So
Yeah.
you're right. That's great advice.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that's interesting. All right, so we've gone through. Let me see if there's anything else here that we need to touch on, or anything else that you want to bring up before we head into kind of closing thoughts. It's amazing. We're already kind of at the end of our show, Jubilee. So
Yeah.
maybe we don't need Charles and Omar. Maybe we could just do this show
And
together.
we got through check-in, we got through all of our questions, you see. So
Yeah, no drama,
yes.
Um,
I am thinking about this AAP guidance. I didn't get a chance to fully read the article, but
Mhm.
I was wondering what caused this big shift. I know that there was a shift. Was it overall that they realized we just got devices in our world? We just use technology, and saying 2 hours is foolish. Is what preempted this?
Yeah, I think they do it every year.
Okay.
They put out recommendations every year, but I'm sure that one of the things that they were thinking about, or that created some urgency around this, was seeing um, the continued impacts of COVID and school shutdowns on literacy rates, right? Like, we haven't recovered. Black and brown youth have not recovered. We still lag behind our peers.
Yep.
And so, like, okay, so we went into COVID. It was totally unexpected. We adopted technology. We're back. We've been back for how many years? 5 years.
6.
6, and we've adopted all this technology, and we're not seeing any movement on on our core metrics. So thinking that probably would have been a big one.
Yeah, for sure.
It's crazy.
And it
Yeah.
makes me think too, like the impact of it or the usefulness of it. It depends on the user. It depends on the person that's planning it. It depends on the team that's implementing it. Just like anything,
Yeah.
we complained about teachers for terrible teachers. Yeah. Then when you look at the professional development that they're receiving or not, you're like, oh well, that's why they ain't no good, right? Like it depends on what you are dealt a deck of cards, right? Or you get your hand or whatever, and then you got to figure out how to maximize what's in your hand. So we had teachers that was raw talent, right? They came in the buildings. The teachers that had phenomenal PD, or at least decent, consistent PD, that taught them how to plan and taught them how to ask questions and taught them how to assess, they're doing great. Their kids are doing great. Then you have others that they did not have access to that. They ain't doing great. The kids ain't doing great. Now you swap out the teachers and you put in technology. What did you think? It was going to be the savior of the world? No. You have a teacher in there that's like, yeah, I'll do exercises 3 through 13. And the teacher is on their cell phone making TikTok videos and doing TikTok dances. They're not looking at what the kids is doing on that app. They ain't evaluating it. They're not pulling the spreadsheet to see what the trends are and saying, oh, we got to pull a small group here and a small. So of course it's not going to produce any sort of, good result. It's not the technology.
Yeah.
Who made it?
Yeah. I think you're right. Technology is not the problem. It's how we use it, And I mean, the technology is. I mean, I would say on the instructional side is getting better. Still never going to replace a human teacher working one-on-one, two-on-one, 20-on-1 with students. But I mean, there are tools out there that do make the job of teaching, including the administrative side, way more efficient, which should then free up the teacher to be able to like hone in on the actual craft, which is like lesson planning and teaching and assessing.
Yeah,
I agree. There's a whole other world too of I want to put in a plug here. I mean, like every school now has some kind of like parent square or outward facing thing. Schools have it. Teachers should all be set up. So like you teach Jubilee, you have 5 classes. So your school sends out central stuff. Jubilee, you should have access to send out a parent square to families, based on like your rosters, right? Yeah. And I'm like, man, some low hanging fruit for teachers to be able to say like, hey, it's Tuesday, March 3rd. We have a major assessment coming up in math or in reading on this Friday. So here's how you can help to prepare your student, right?
Yes.
Like let the parents know when the big assessments are coming up, and those platforms are like, you can do it on your phone. You can like type in a message and send it out.
Yep.
And I'm struggling with my kids' school right now on doing that because they do it sometimes. And I'm like, yes, this is amazing. And then they just don't do it, because they're busy. They're stressed. I get it. But I mean, it's so easy. It's so easy. Yeah. But it doesn't mean they're not going to do it.
I have a good example of how I've seen like one of these platforms. I forget the name of the software, but I saw it implemented in maybe a 7th or 8th grade classroom. And essentially it's to support the students when they're doing their extended responses or constructed responses for math. Always get them confused which one is which, right? But when they actually have to show their work and do the word problem, what have you. And so the teacher will teach the lesson and like, now it's time to do numbers 7 through 13. But the teacher wants to see how they're responding to number 8. Maybe that's a critical standard and he wants to see how they're mastering. So that's the one that he can collect, right? So on their Chromebooks or whatever the device they're using, everybody's answering everything. They submit number 8. It goes to the teacher's device and the teacher is able to do a quick scan, right? Just like you would if you were,
walking around,
circulating the classroom, right? But he gets it and then he's able to start at the board, at the smart board. I noticed this. So, and begin to have academic discourse around that. Right. And he's built the community where we can talk about our mistakes. We can talk about our successes. We can talk about our mistakes. Why do you think Joseph came up with this? Right. And it's like, it just made it faster so that more instructional time was taken to really talk through how to strengthen the response and what the misconception was here versus, the teacher having to go grade everybody's paper. So,
yeah, I think that's where it's at. So, yeah. All right. Well, we're up on time. I'll offer a couple of closing thoughts and then I'd love to hear your closing thoughts. There you go. So it's interesting. Like our short talk today has already shifted my thinking around technology in schools. But I think it still remains the same. I think, there's a couple of threads. I think the technology needs to be developmentally appropriate, not just the actual technology, but just the use of technology in particular grades. So maybe not a ban in all elementary schools, because that's what they're doing. This is what the big systems do.
Yeah.
They use these big blunt tools. This is now I understand what you were getting at earlier in the show. They use a big blunt tool. They're like, "Fine, let's ban it." I'm like, hold on. There's a much more like we should actually be we should pull in like researchers and look at what's happening, make recommendations, just to get smarter about how we're using technology in schools. Because
Yeah.
the bans are like the big blunt tools, and I agree, it just doesn't. It's just we're smarter than that as human beings.
Yeah.
So I think there's that, and then I still have questions about the access that adults, teachers, and administrators have around like professional development with technology. I'm not talking about like you going off and doing a program with Common Sense Media or Apple or
Yeah.
whatever else. I'm talking about like teacher prep programs. Like, what does that look like in
Yeah.
2026? And then what are big districts and charter networks doing to continue to provide support around technology in schools? So all that to say, like, I think it's not about like less or more technology, but just being smarter about how we're using it in our schools.
Indeed. And I would say at the end of the day, I just don't want us to lose our ability to critically think. I think that's what's
Mhm.
most important. You use technology up the wazoo, but please let's ensure that our generation and everybody else that's coming after future generations can think, right? So if we're gonna hire a teacher, you want to do all your lesson plans using Chat GPT, that's fine. But do you know what it takes to build one if you don't have that access to that? Do you know what makes a good
Mhm.
lesson plan? Because if you don't know that and you're not critically thinking, then you can't evaluate what's good and what's not, and you'll put anything in front of a kid. So I think that part is important. And then secondly, something that you said made me think about, again, this integration of technology versus the band. When I think about like my son, right, either of them, they're both musicians. For a little while, one of my sons was like, "I think I want to do be an electrician or whatever the case may be." If I'm principal of that school and I find out early on that there are scholars that have certain interests, then I'm going to find a way to integrate technology into their learning experience aligned with where they're going. What do they use in the field now? And if you're an electrician, right? What do they use in the field now in the music industry to create that's connected to some kind of technological platform or what have you, right? So again, just thinking about integration and introducing them,
Yep.
aligning it to what folks are passionate about. And that's my final thought.
That is the next iteration of this conversation, I would say. All right. Well, we're
Yeah.
at time. Thanks everybody for showing up today. South Star Classroom episode 225,
Yeah.
225, which is incredible. Wow, what a ride.
Right.
Thank you, Jubilee, for the
Yes.
It felt good today. It felt like we just had like a one-on-one today. So
We did. It was
I
quite nice.
appreciate that.
Yay.
And check us out next week, people. We'll be back at the same time.
Yep.
Every Tuesday, coming at you 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. East Coast time. Peace. Let's see.
Hope it
1, 2,
works.
3.